Hey folks, it's your buddy Mike Messier. So as the title of this video is reading, this will be my WOOO Becoming Ric Flair documentary reaction. Just launched today on the Peacock Network. I just watched it. It's one of these things where some of these, special programs, whether it's television or a film in the movie theater, I like to see them early because I hate other people's opinions tainting my viewpoint of something. However, you might be watching this and you have or haven't watched the Ric Flair special yet. So I'll probably do the same to you. I'll probably warp your perspective of it if you watch my little reaction here video before you watch it yourself. So it's really up to you if you want to watch, my review after you watch the Ric Flair Becoming Ric Flair special. Please do, or just hang with me here and I'll give you my thoughts before you watch it. So let's get into it. And you're welcome to leave a comment. This is the day after Christmas 2022. What are my thoughts on the Flair documentary? Mixed. I do feel like it's a good documentary, but it's probably more for people that aren't familiar with the Ric Flair story. If you are, thanks, Ari. I'm going to warp your perspective, brother. If you're not, and Merry Christmas to you, by the way, still jet. Yeah, and that's the thing. A whole generation of us raised there on the television with watches, sunglasses, matches. I've actually been to a Ric Flair motivational speech, believe it or not, a long time ago in a Gold's Gym that Ric Flair owned at the time. I was there in person, and that's the second time I met Ric Flair. The first time that Ric Flair just briefly 4 times in life, and I'm said that and so forth. And he's always been saying that this to me, it felt very much like a cut and paste job, kind of a Frankenstein's monster that featured Ric Flair. I guess this is supposed to be the counterpart to the Ric Flair documentary from 3 or 4 years ago. I thought that was a great documentary. Like, I remember watching that. I think I even did a review of it at the time. I thought the Ric Flair documentary on ESPN was awesome. And there are things that this documentary goes into a little bit deeper. Basically, the plane accident, I believe it was 75, that paralyzed Johnny Valentine. And a little bit of nugget in here, I didn't realize that it was Ric Flair actually hooked up the whole thing with the plane. But Flair is kind of taking ownership of that. He said that he was the one that was first talking to this Vietnam veteran that was the flyer of the plane. Unfortunately, the plane crashed, paralyzing Johnny Valentine, ending his career. Breaking Ric Flair's back. Flair says he lost 2 inches of height from that. Maybe that's true. Who knows? And the flyer, the guy, the pilot, died. So really a horrible accident. I would say that this documentary, from my memory, does a better job than the doc 3 or 4 years ago on that. What else? But there's a lot of things. Once we really get into it, if you've been listening to Ric Flair's podcast recently, he's been kind of making some false promises from this doc. And what I think happened is, if I were to guess, knowing how documentaries work, knowing how the WWE, this is a WWE program, by the way. So knowing how WWE kind of sanitizes things, I'm guessing some of the more controversial topics, namely Ric Flair's relationship with Eric Bischoff and Ric Flair's kind of counter argument against the Dark Side of the Ring Plane Ride from Hell episode, where basically one of the stewards was claiming that Flair sexually assaulted her. Well, Flair on his podcast with CONRAD THOMPSON has been claiming that he's got a big rebuttal to that. And that's not apparent from what I saw today. I mean, I watched the whole thing just now, just finished watching, and there's no real rebuttal to the Dark episode. So it must have been edited out. And that's what WWE does. Something as hot topic as that, they're going to hush it, as Javier Nino says, they're going to hush it. So it just shows to me that, yes, this is a documentary that's kind of like for the same audience that watches Young Rock. If you want a sanitized version of events, watch this. If you want what the WWE wants you to think and what they want you to know, this is what you watch. You see what I'm saying? If you want the real information, I mean, here are some topics, for instance, you might be thinking, well, Mike, what did they not cover that they should have covered? Well, here's a topic that's not too pleasant. Teddy Long, in some shoot interviews, I believe with Sean, the guy that does the Kevin Nash podcast now. I'm trying to remember his last name. But basically, Teddy Long has claimed that Ric Flair was very racist to him in particular. And Teddy Long, who is a well-established sports entertainer, manager, referee for the last 20, 25 years, more like 30 years probably. But Teddy has some real horror stories of Ric Flair being racist to him. Well, if you want to get your fingernails dirty, let's talk about that in one of these fucking documentaries. But the reality is, like I said, it's sanitized. If Flair had something to say about the Dark Side of the Ring plane ride from hell episode, where he wanted to counter the woman who was claiming she was sexually assaulted by Ric Flair, let's hear what he has to say. But the WWE doesn't do that because they don't really respect their audience. And I did feel like I'm watching this 2-hour, documentary, and it's a chunk of, it's similar stories to what was told in the ESPN one 3 or 4 years ago. Then you take a little chunk of his issues with Eric Bischoff that have been presented all over the place. Then you take a chunk of the Four Horsemen documentary. And there are clips in this documentary that are from those other documentaries. There's chunks of this from the Four Horsemen doc, and then you go into the Evolution story, Triple H, Batista, Randy Orton, and Ric Flair. They just take a little chunk from their Evolution special on the Ruthless Aggression era. So is it a good show? Is it entertaining? Yes. Is it really this great thing that Rick himself has been promoting as this mind-blowing experience? I don't think so. I think if you haven't seen the ESPN doc 3 or 4 years ago and you saw this, you would love it. But if you're familiar with 3 or 4 years ago, if you're listening to the Ric Flair podcast, if you watch his fucking career like I did, nothing in this is terribly mind-blowing, with the exception of probably 2 topics: the plane accident, or 3, I'll say. I don't remember hearing about Flair getting hit by lightning. That's a pretty good story, but they kind of go over it quickly, but it's interesting. In 1983, I didn't know that Flair was hit by lightning. And unfortunately, the passing of son, Reid Flair, I did find that pretty interesting, and I don't recall that being touched upon 3 or 4 years ago as much. But they do show clips of Reid Flair wrestling in Japan. And I guess I'm kind of curious now. I like to watch some of those matches, and it's unfortunate and that Reid passed away so young. So I did find that those kind of parts were either brand new to me or they're just expanded upon. What else? It's overall, especially at the end of the doc, they show Rick, training in 2022, this past year, right? And they show him training and in the gym after going to the hospital, once again, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, almost dying in the hospital. He comes out, he's still drinking alcohol. They show him working out in the gym, but it's like, wait a minute, why are they showing him working out in the gym? Well, that's footage from the Ric Flair's last match pay-per-view that Jim Crockett Promotions, but, really Conrad Thompson promoted in July of 2022, not that long ago. Well, you're like, okay, are they going to mention that Flair came out of retirement for this other retirement match? Well, they do in the post script, like that documentary officially ends. They do that kind of post, update stuff. And it just seemed to me very much they didn't really want to go into that Ric Flair's last match with Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal and Andre. They didn't really want to go into that too deeply because it wasn't a WWE sponsored event. And they didn't get a cut of the action from that. So, it's WWE picking and choosing what they want the audience, which is a big audience, to think about and to put in their perspective. And to the fucking victor goes the spoils, to the producers and the editors and the WWE. You see Kevin Dunn's name at the fucking end credits. You know that this is a con job from the WWE, or just their version, their sanitized WWE-rific version of events. So when people ask me, you know, friends of mine that are not as big a wrestling fan as I am, but they know I'm a wrestling fan, and they might know a little bit about wrestling, they'll say, "Oh, Mike, did you watch that special on Vince McMahon or Hulk Hogan or, you know, some WWE fucking show?" A lot of times I don't, because A, I know too much goddamn information already about these stories, and I know that what they're going to present is a sanitized version, which doesn't fucking interest me at this point. It's not that entertaining to me. I mean, I'll go into the Young Rock thing. I've talked about that before. When they've got Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik wrestling Hillbilly Jim and Ric Flair, of all people, in 1985 in Hawaii, a match that never fucking happened because Ric Flair was wrestling for the NWA. He would not just randomly show up in Hawaii and tag with Billy Jim, who was a WWF guy, against a couple other WWF guys at the time, Volkov and the Sheik. You know what I mean? It's just, to me, it's disingenuous, and it's, I don't want to say appalling, but it's just, I can't be bothered with it. I can't be bothered with these WWE documentaries. They're just not true to form. The Young Rock show, I have a female friend of mine, great lady, but she's always telling me about the latest Young Rock show and trying to tell me about something that I already know about. And she's telling me these things. I'm like, okay, they took the Georgia Territory Wrestling War from the 70s and they put it into Hawaii. You know, they just revisionize wrestling. And yes, I fucking get it. I'm in the entertainment industry. I know that for reasons of time and conciseness and telling a story in an efficient way, sometimes you've got to combine events or combine situations, and you know, because the truth on television is not really the real truth, right? So you've got to edit your stories to make them digestible or even entertaining or even presentable. I understand that. You do things like Young Rock, we have fucking Ric Flair and Hillbilly Jim as a goddamn tag team against Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. I'm not going to watch your fucking program, Rock. Sorry. Take your people's elbow and fucking make me a better show, because when you disrespect history so goddamn much, I'm just not going to watch it. I'm not going to honor it with my eyeballs. You understand? So what else can I say about this doc? I mean, it's you know, I mean, I think that there's the refrain on the Ric Flair documentary is he's always trying to earn his respect. He's always trying to earn everybody's respect. But I think if you're an attuned viewer, at least for me, what you're reading in between the lines is there's this missing part of Ric Flair that goes back to Fred Phillips, which apparently was his natural birth name. It's suspected that Flair was part of this horrible Memphis black male baby situation when Rick was born, which is really pretty sad. But Rick kind of wants to block that out. He doesn't really want to engage with that. Apparently 3 or 4 years ago, his natural born brother reached out to Wendy, you know, they say, which is Flair's fourth wife, you know, which is, I'm not sure if they were officially married. I guess they were, but Fred, this brother of Ric Flair, reaches out to this woman, and you'd think that, you know, Flair would have a morbid interest at least in talking to the guy, but he didn't. He blew him off. So that's kind of I mean, that would be really interesting if you brought this guy, whoever he is, who's claiming that he's Ric Flair's brother, bring him to the surface. Let's see that story play out. But instead we just get the same old crap. Eric Bischoff treated me poorly. He pushed the NWO over me. I went to WWF and won the Royal Rumble, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's just, they kind of go back to the same patterns. They go back to the same kind of stock stories. Like I said, the lightning bolt, Reed's passing and Reed's young career, and the plane accident were probably the highlights for this as far as dramatics. But look, I'm not telling you not to watch it. I'm just saying that for me, I probably just overdosed on this Ric Flair information for one lifetime, and it's not that impressive to me. To the marks, to the idiot McMarks out there, the casual wrestling fan, the person that watches Young Rock and thinks that's what pro wrestling history is, they might enjoy this goddamn program because they don't know any better. And that's the type of audience WWE wants. They want the uninformed, ignorant, casual wrestling fan who's going to watch WrestleMania once a year and maybe Survivor Series and maybe the Royal Rumble. That's who they play to. So as far as the Aries of the world, the Javiers of the world, the people that watch my videos about wrestling, they're not playing to us intelligent wrestling fans. They're playing to the non-wrestling fans. You know what I mean? The surface level fucks who don't know any goddamn better. So that's my fucking opinion. People might say, well, gee whiz, Mike, it's a little harsh, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy this show, but I'll be honest with you. I watched the whole thing, but I was also just kind of doing other things while I was watching it that didn't distract me from the television, but things that I could do while still watching the TV because it wasn't that inspiring to me as much as the one from 3 or 4 years ago. And so there you have it. So Rick, all the promises about all this stuff that's going to come to the surface that you talked about in your podcast must have been cropped and edited out because it wasn't apparent to what I saw. And that's it. So if you have any further comments, gentlemen, please make them. If not, I will let you go. Wish you a happy good day. So on and so forth. I will be seeing the new Margot Robbie movie later on today. I'll be doing a review of that. I still haven't seen Avatar 2. I wanted to. I'll be seeing that tomorrow with the D-Box. Long story there. Hope you had a Christmas. Like I said, the ticker's on, folks. So if you have any further comments, please leave them or leave a comment if you watch this video after, and I'll address whatever you say later in another video. But that's it. Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. A great way to the end of the year is to buy one of my books. You can just go to MikeMessier.com, click on the bottom of the screen, and all my books are there for the taking, for the buying, for the purchasing. And that's it, gentlemen. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. And Ric Flair, still love you, buddy. Still a big fan. But as far as this documentary goes, I give it like 3 out of 5 stars. And maybe if you're a new wrestling fan, or if you're not as informed as the rest of us, 4 stars for the uninformed, and 2.5 or 3 for the informed. That's all I can say. So there you go, folks. Have a good one.